All right, I'm really excited for our next speaker. Melissa is going to talk to us about traditional food knowledge. She's a lifelong Alaskan and associate professor in dietetics and nutrition at the University of Alaska Anchorage, teaching courses such as Survey of Alaska Native Nutrition and Nutrition Through the Life Cycle. She is also the project manager of UAA's Alaska Traditional Kitchen, a project that promotes traditional foods, stories, and Alaska Native ways of knowing through live and recorded cooking demonstration. As a non-Indigenous person who was born and raised in Alaska.
Thank you.
Do you
All
need
right,
the
testing.
pointer?
Ooh, yeah. Thank you. All right, thanks. Yeah. All right, hello everyone. I'm so excited to be here and share my presentation on honoring culture through food. And I know the title is a bit different than what you see in your agenda. I did some reflection and thought, you know, the title in the agenda is more for someone I feel would be Indigenous. And I am non-Indigenous, so I felt that title would be more appropriate for someone who's Indigenous. So I thought I'd change the title to Honoring Culture Through Food. All right? So a little bit about me. You heard a little bit in my bio there. However, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about me. I was born and raised in Alaska. I grew up in Willow, just a couple of hours north of Anchorage on the road system. So if you blink, you miss it basically, right? Yes. And I grew up in a sled dog mushing community. So back in the day, when my dad raced in Iditarod, Iditarod mushers could go to friends' houses. So my mom and I would travel to McGrath, to Unalakleet, and to Nome, and so I got to experience different cultures that way. And as what's said in my bio, as a non-Indigenous person who grew up in Alaska on Native land, a part of my work is through personal commitment of reconciliation. And that's through my work with Indigenous peoples, Indigenous organizations, to improve health and wellness through access of traditional Indigenous foods. Let's take a look at culture, food, and nutrition, all right? So what is culture? What is food? And what do those mean to you? So I'm asking you first, what is culture? What does it mean to you? And loud, okay? Anyone? I know it's after lunch and we're getting a little tired, but anything.
I got the mic for you.
Family, community, traditions, right? Great. Anyone else? What does culture mean to you? Okay, well, we have a shy group today, and I didn't think you all were shy, but all right. That's all right.
I'll give it a shot.
It's on from your parents, family members, okay? Captain Town.
A shared system of beliefs and knowledge and ways of knowing that unifies a people.
I love it. That should be a textbook answer right there. All right, now what is food? What does it mean to you? Nourishment. All right. Anyone else? Tradition, communicating. Family, friends. Gathering, caring. Oh my gosh, such great answers. And as you can tell, I'm sorry?
Body, mind, spirit.
How we nourish body, mind, and spirit. Awesome. Yes, all great, fantastic answers. And as you can see, culture and food have different meanings to different people, right? Right. So textbook answer, what is culture? So the professor coming out in me as well. Culture is defined as broadly defined as values, beliefs, attitudes, and practices accepted by members of a group or community. It is learned, not inherited. It is passed on, as someone said, from one generation to the next. And it changes over time. And we have seen that throughout our lifetime, right? Culture encompasses many things. It encompasses art, literature, religion, language, and one of our favorites, right? Food. Yeah? Now, I'm sure you've heard this metaphor before, but we can view culture like an iceberg, right? There are certain things that we can see right off the top, but there's so much more, right, underneath the surface. And it really takes time to get to know someone, to develop their trust, to gain their trust, and develop rapport with them. It takes time, okay? It takes time for us to learn about someone's health beliefs and medicine practices. We need to ask those questions, right? We need to listen. And each culture has their own values, right? I love Molly of Denali and love that they have encompassed Alaska Native values as a whole. Now, understanding, and as Captain Town and Dr. Todd talked about yesterday in their presentation, Bridging Indigenous Knowledge and Western Knowledge Together, different cultures, different tribes, each have their own values, right? Different tribes throughout Alaska have different values. Many are very similar values. And when we talk about other cultures, maybe we're talking about Filipino cultures, Hmong culture, Native Hawaiian cultures, they also have their own values, okay? And Indigenous identity is a very important part of culture, right? Anyone's identity is a very important part of culture. Indigenous peoples are more than something else. They are more than indigenous creatures. These are terms that have been used in the last 5 years publicly. Now, we have a very set of very collective terms and labels that are very complex. And thankfully, the Native Americans in philanthropy came up with a list of terms to help define American Indians, Alaska Natives, Native Americans, Aboriginals, Native Hawaiians, so we, the public, could have a better understanding of the terminology and help understand Indigenous identity and how important it is in relation to culture. So I know that it might be a little difficult for you to see this particular figure, but this is from an article from 2005, and it brings together what Captain Town and Dr. Todd talked about yesterday, bridging Indigenous knowledge with Western knowledge, right? And coming to a common ground. Now, there were many folks that came up with different, their own versions of Indigenous knowledge and Western knowledge, and how they can marry the two together to form a common ground. And I would love to see, we have so many creative people in this room, I would love to see an illustration of these two, besides just circles, right? Of these two coming together. You know, maybe it's a tree coming together somehow with, I'm not sure how all of you would view Western science, and some might view it as very rigid, right? So how do we bring these two together and recognize the importance of culture? So again, I understand that it's after lunch, so don't snooze on me, okay, when I ask you to close your eyes, all right? But I'd like you to close your eyes, and I'd like you to think of a cultural food that brings comfort to you. Think about where you are at as you are eating this cultural food. Who are you with? What are the smells? What does it taste like? What does it look like? Did you harvest these foods yourself? Maybe you were with your children. Maybe you were with your auntie or aunties. Maybe you were with your tutu. Imagine your food. Now I want you to open your eyes. How did you feel thinking about your cultural food that brings comfort to you? What was your feeling? You were ready to eat it? I'm sorry, did I make you hungry again? So, what is a comfort, right? Yeah. Connected. Sorry? I made you homesick. I'm sorry. Big hug. And that's something that we need to think about with cultural foods, right? Not everybody has access to their cultural foods or even ingredients. So now I want to talk about traditional indigenous foods and nutrition. We've talked about culture, now let's talk about food, okay? So I want to define traditional versus indigenous foods, okay? Because there is a bit of a difference. Similar, but a bit of a difference. Indigenous chef Lois Ellen Frank worked on her PhD. And in her dissertation, she defined 4 eras. The first era was pre-contact. These are indigenous foods, foods that come from the land, the water, the air. These are pre-contact foods, okay? These are foods before Europeans came, or even for Alaska, Russians. Okay? Then we have first contact foods. And this is when foods were brought in by colonists, by missionaries, and so forth. So beef, sheep, wheat, things like that were introduced. The third era, a hard one, right? Government issued foods. And these are commodities. These are foods that were forced on people. Okay? And some traditional foods were born from these commodities, such as fry bread, right? And fry bread, yes, it is controversial To some, it means perseverance. To others, it means trauma. And these government-issued foods, by some, like white Apache chef Nephi Craig, he views these government-issued foods as USDA traditional foods. Now, let's take a look at the era we're currently in, the fourth era, the new Native American cuisine and food sovereignty era. This is where people are reclaiming their foods, learning more about their seeds of life, and bringing together their foods, their indigenous foods, and fusing them with Western foods as well, creating this brand new, beautiful food, right? And bringing more about food sovereignty and bringing on more about food security. Okay? So those are our four eras. Now looking specifically at some indigenous foods, first we have bison, and this is a comparison of looking at beef, chicken, pork, even sockeye salmon. And you can see that bison is lower in fat, high in protein, lower in calories, lower in cholesterol, higher in iron and vitamin B12, okay, than the Western foods that have been brought in. Sockeye salmon, just as equally important as bison. And wood bison have been reintroduced to Alaska as well. And that's one of a friend's, Chef Flora Deacon's, foods that really speak to her heart. And I'll talk about Chef Flora here in a little bit. And then we have bearded seal. So 3 ounces, about the size of your palm or the size of a deck of cards, right, have about 80% of your daily value of iron. Just 3 ounces. That would take consuming 25 ounces of beef pot roast. I don't know if you have that in you, but that's a lot of pot roast. Or maybe you could consume 4 hot dogs. I don't know, to get that much. 6 to 8 chicken nuggets? No? I'd still go with the seal. Or 52 ounces of canned lunch meat. How about that? Yeah, I see some no's in the audience. No, thank you. And then we have salmon. So delicious, full of protein, and as you can see, it is rich in omega-3 fatty acids. King salmon at about 1,000 milligrams, a little over. Sockeye salmon, a little bit less, at a little bit over 600 milligrams, right? I'm not sure if this was Yukon salmon, Yukon River salmon. I have a feeling that it might be a little bit more than that from the Yukon River. But keep these numbers in mind, okay? Do you think there's a traditional food that has even more omega-3 fatty acids in it? Ha ha. Seal oil, yes. Almost 3 times the amount in just a tablespoon, right? Seal oil is packed full of goodness, right? And that's bearded seal oil, whereas spotted seal oil is just below 2,000 milligrams. Pretty awesome, right? And seal oil, of course, is Alaska's condiment, right? We dip everything in seal oil, right? Now bringing in the 3 sisters, thinking about our friends and family in Indian country. Corn, beans, squash. What one sister couldn't provide, the other sisters did, bringing it all together. And these are packed full of nutrients, right? Wild rice. There are so many different varieties of wild rice, and friends and family looking at the different ways to bring those and incorporate them into different foods. Berries, one of our favorite, right? I'm sure many of you were busy berry picking this year. Very rich in vitamin C, antioxidants, and as you all probably know, wild Alaskan blueberries have more antioxidants than cultivated grocery store blueberries. Okay? And then including our native Hawaiian friends, kalo, otherwise known as taro, is a sacred native plant that is often made into poi, a traditional or a staple dish that's high in fiber. Okay? And there are, as you know, many resources, many educational materials, but when I look at these two plates, I think about the different regions in Alaska. And do our traditional foods, our indigenous foods, fit within these plates? How can they fit? How can we make more regionally appropriate plates for our folks? Here's an example from Southeast. And then again, bringing in our native Hawaiian friends and family. This is a friend of mine, native Hawaiian dietitian friend of mine, developed this, and including the ancestors in the mountains, because they're a part. They should be a part of that education, right? So as you've already established, traditional foods are very nutrient dense. But they're much more than that, right? They're comforting, as someone said. They're spiritual. They are home. So earlier I mentioned one of my ways as part of my work, reconciliation is very important for me. And one of the projects that I work on is the UAA Alaska Traditional Kitchen. So bringing honoring culture into all of this, into my work. I want to talk to you a little bit about what I've been doing and how we've been honoring culture over at UAA. So our origin story, we developed in late 2019, early 2020, under the National Resource Center for Alaska Native Elders. This is housed under the College of Health at UAA, and is very important for us to include Indigenous knowledge as we create cooking videos with traditional foods, okay? We include elders, and another part of this is including an Indigenous, and that is Chef Flora Deacon. We contract her to help us develop cooking videos with traditional foods. And Chef Flora, you might have seen her in ANTHC's Store Outside Your Door videos. If you've never seen those videos before, I highly recommend going to that YouTube channel and checking out those videos. Very interesting, informative videos. And Chef Flora has, she went to Vermont to get her culinary degree, to fulfill her passion and bring it back to work with traditional foods. So we contract her for her culinary skills and for her traditional knowledge. And she views food as medicine. She's also originally from Grayling, Alaska, so along the Iditarod Trail there, and lives out here in the valley now. Again, she brings her knowledge, and she'll be straightforward and say, this is based on my background. This is based on my personal experience, and recognizes that each and every one of you brings your personal background and experience to the table as well. So the kitchen was originally under the National Resource Center for Alaska Native Elders, and within the development of this, this was I wasn't involved in the development. I came into the picture a little bit later on, but I was aware of this project. And the project manager at the time worked with Chef Flora on developing videos, audio tales with Flora, as well as background information and nutrition facts. And then the kitchen went through a couple of years of inactivity. And the College of Health dean came to the Dietetics and Nutrition department, which is where I'm at, and asked us to revive the kitchen. And as a department, we thought it was important to bring this back to life, to share traditional knowledge, to share the information, not just within the university, not just within the state of Alaska, but globally, right? Because we have many friends and family that are not in Alaska. They live outside of Alaska. So how can we share this knowledge with them? So I was talking to Marcia from ANTHC a little bit earlier, and I have a problem saying no to projects, especially one as important as this. And I quickly raised my hand and I said, me, I will take this project on. And so I adopted this project and started a few things first. Logo development, kind of important for a project, right? We have our university logo, cool. But I wanted to have a culturally appropriate logo as well. And I recruited an Alaska Native youth. Her Dena'ina name is Conchi, which means porcupine. So she has her own business called Conchi Crafts, and she developed this beautiful logo for us to represent all Alaska Native cultures. So the ulu. Now, we wanted to include a food preparation tool in our logo, and we recognize that the ulu is not historically used throughout the entire state of Alaska, but it is universally recognized throughout the entire state, right? And it is a very versatile tool, not only just in food preparation, but in skinning, right? And creating different things. Salmon, a universally recognized and consumed traditional food, right? Throughout Alaska. Yeah. It, for me, represents food security and food sovereignty, especially with the issues that we've had in the last several years. Muktuk, again, I recognize that this is not a universally consumed traditional food throughout Alaska, but very well known as well. And for me, I see it as, all traditional foods, I think, are its own little food system, right? But when I really think about Muktuk, I think about it as this, as the food system representing all 5 components. Production, right? Harvesting. Processing. The amount of time that goes into processing, right? Distribution. The sharing throughout the entire community after a hunt. The consumption. And then the last component, waste. Now in Alaska culture, nothing is wasted, right? And whatever's left over is given back to the land and sea. And we thank the land and sea for their gifts. Next we have berries, right? This is also a universally consumed, harvested traditional food, and again, full of antioxidants. And then the forget-me-not, which shows perseverance. And the forget-me-not represents our ancestors, that they will never be forgotten, that they are the culture bearers, and that even as ancestors, we still need to sit and listen to them. So next, I've worked on digital media. We had a website through the National Resource Center. It is still a work in progress as I've taken this project over. And I've added some social media as well, which I have a little more control over than the website, because the website's housed under UAA. So please take a look at those, and I try to include our educational materials as well. And then I know that the term kitchen might be misleading. We don't have a physical space. We don't have a permanent kitchen. So what do? Well, we've been very resourceful. We've used colleagues' kitchens. We've rented a church kitchen. I've even taken funding and purchased items to build a mobile kitchen so we can have live cooking demonstrations. Our videographers come from our faculty success department, Jenna and Dan, and so they've been the ones doing the editing and all the fun stuff, making it just beautiful work. So, bless you. So in spring 2024, when I took over this project, Conchi developed 3 infographics. We developed 3 videos. One is a blackcurrant sorbet, delish. Another is a honey soy broiled salmon recipe. And then the one shown here is a bison sausage stuffed sweet potato. So great for fall, right? And we, as I said, we created 3 cooking videos, and we also had 4 live cooking demonstrations. 1 for our UAA Board of Regents, and then 3 for specifically tailored for high school students. ANTHC, for instance, during their Career Exploration Week, and even HOSA, which is the health high school health organization. They had a big conference, and we presented to them. So here's the black sorbet, and just doesn't look like it'll come up to play, which is okay. But this is to entice you to take a look at our video, okay? So this last year, I wanted to do things a little bit differently. Previously, we'd been purchasing foods. This last year, again, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to bring in indigenous foods that really couldn't be purchased, okay? So I understand that salmon and octopus, yeah, we can purchase those, but I wanted those to come from different regions. So I was able to get donations and even barter for these traditional foods. So we had moose, she-fish, octopus, whitefish, salmon, and made some amazing foods. So we had 2 live demonstrations in rural areas. One was in Seldovia, and the other was in Kodiak. We created 4 cooking videos. One was with Flora's sister, Janet, and they made fish ice cream, and their Athabascan term was vengik. And you can see that pictured here. We made that with she-fish and wild Alaska blueberries. Now, I attempted to source traditional fat, but unfortunately I couldn't find any, and I really did not want to use Crisco. So we used something that we'd never used before, beef fat. Yeah, we sourced it from a local farmer, and Janet and Flora rendered it out to tallow, which they said it took a very long time. And they were skeptical of my idea of using beef fat, I'm sure you can imagine. But once we finished the product, as you can see in that top right-hand corner, it was delicious. It was so good. And even Flora and Janet, I changed their minds about how they felt about the beef tallow, so they've convinced. And then we did Instapot teriyaki moose roast. That was like butter. It melted in your mouth. And we even got some local potatoes and carrots. Our next video included whitefish, making a whitefish stew. And then the fourth video, I was actually in. Scary. And again, doing something different, bringing our elders into the videos as well. So I invited a couple of Alutic brothers, Big Shot and Barney. One is 77, the other is 81. And apparently it doesn't matter how old you are, you still have the same brotherly love for each other. They were hilarious, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. We made an octopus spread as well as a salmon patties, and it was just, they had a lot of fun. As you can see, we were having a lot of fun, and we were just rolling with it, because with elders, you kind of have to just roll with it, right? Yeah, no set script. So what does the future look like? Well, as we're all probably experiencing, I don't have any current grants, and that's not for lack of trying. I am hoping, crossing my fingers, that I get a grant by the end of this year. But due to my capacity, working on small projects and collaborations, working on improving the website, and I want to include more life stages into our project. And so I'm hoping to work on an animated traditional foods alphabet video. So I don't know if that's Alaska as a whole or if that's working with certain organizations and getting their languages into the picture as well, but just an idea that I have. So in case you want to collaborate, I would love to. And as always, when we're working on our projects and when we're learning things, it's always important to include our elders. Sit and listen. They have a lot to teach us. They will eventually become our ancestors. And where we can still sit and listen to our ancestors, we just need to listen a lot harder, right? And try to bring it in. So with that, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and interact with you. And here is my contact information. And I have about, I think, a few minutes anyway.
Thank you, Melissa. Oh, I see a hand already. I didn't even have to ask what questions. I'm on my way with my microphone.
A couple of years ago, we had a really great presentation about at the Alaska Native Medical Center, their hospital. They do a lot of indigenous foods there. Have you thought about collaborating with them to use their kitchen or share resources?
So, funny story. I was actually a part of that. Way back when, in 2014, when the Farm Bill came out, it included verbiage about donating traditional foods to institutions. Because ANTHC is on federal land, that is the verbiage that they could use. Whereas the rest of the state of Alaska, minus the municipality of Anchorage, they could use the Alaska Food Code. And that's been in the Food Code for well over the Farm Bill verbiage. And so I was a part of developing that program. And then Chef Amy Foote, she made my dreams come true, beyond come true. So yes, I've thought about collaborating with them, but I think today they've had some turnover happening there, and they've been changing some of their program. So I think some of the dust needs to settle a little bit before I have a more serious conversation. I know they are wanting to do at the South Central Foundation Traditional Food Symposium, Vernay, and forgive me, I cannot remember her last name, talked about doing a study, traditional food study at the Alaska Native Medical Center. So hopefully that comes to fruition and we can see that someday. Great idea.
Maggie, you want to say anything?
I was just going to say South Central Primary Care Building has a kitchen, and they do a lot of classes that they teach, and they also film some of the recipes. So I don't know if you've worked with them at all.
Thank you. That is a great idea. I had not thought of that. Thank you. Is it? Yeah. Cool. Thank you. We have.
Do you have any resources for grants when it comes to cooking classes, preventative?
Resources for grants when it comes to cooking classes?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I do not. So if anybody has any ideas in terms of grants, in terms of funding for cooking classes, please share. And I know that funding is very difficult, but cooking classes are so amazing and so informative. I know. It's frustrating. You're saying that you think it is a great way to help with their success in preventing and managing their diabetes and any chronic disease, right? Yeah, hands-on. Hands-on is such a great learning tool, yes. Anyone else?
All right. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.